Hey guys, welcome back. Today I'm going to do something different. I've got several different raw perfumery materials that some are commonly used in a lot of perfumes, and there's some that I had not heard of until I'd seen them. I was very kindly sent some raw materials by some lovely, generous people that I know. I'm just going to randomly pick some things and just smell them. Now, I have smelled all of these at least once before, but not in any way where I was taking notes about what I was smelling and trying to analyze it too much. So essentially what you're going to get here today is like a kind of first impression. I'm just going to smell them and try my best to describe what I'm actually smelling. But I thought I'd start off with a couple of very commonly used materials, particularly in woody fragrances. And often you'll look at a note pyramid on some perfumes, and a very common note that's used in perfumes, woody perfumes or perfumes with a woody base, is cedar. Now, most of the time it's usually described cedar wood or cedar. Sometimes they get more specific and you will see things like Virginia cedar or Atlas cedar. Now I have both materials here and I'm going to smell them, and I have smelled these before, and the differences between them are quite distinct. Virginia cedar is actually technically not cedar at all. When you look at where it's derived from, it's actually a juniper species. So I'm going to smell this one, what is commonly known as Virginia cedar, and try and describe to you what I'm smelling. Okay, so when you smell some perfumes and you pick up particular woodiness and you smell this kind of dry sweet, it's not even so much sweet, this is definitely, the Virginia cedar is definitely where you might smell what a lot of people describe as a pencil shavings kind of woodiness. It's that light dusty, it's almost like a light dusty freshness, this very distinctly woody, what maybe a lot of the population might recognize as a wood smell, like fresh sawn wood or fresh shaved wood, for instance. When you smell that in a perfume, it's generally, Virginia cedar is what you might smell. Now, one perfume off the top of my head that I would have a guess has quite a bit of Virginia cedar in it is Tam Dao from Diptyque, because that is a particular smell that I recognize from that perfume. Now, Atlas cedar is a different beast altogether. Atlas cedar is actually from a cedar species, but strangely enough, the first thing that comes to my mind with Atlas cedar is it's a milky wood. It's got this almost warm milkiness, and is kind of a quite a balsamic kind of wood. There are some things about this that remind me of other raw materials like labdanum. It's warm as when you compare it to the Virginia cedar. Like I said, the word milky, there is more of a sweetness here, which is why I'm reminded of more of a resinous kind of wood than a dry woody wood. And Atlas cedar is actually quite beautiful, and you can imagine that this would blend really well with some resins like labdanum and even some dry incenses. So of the two, they're both lovely materials on their own, but of the two, as a smell, Atlas cedar is really, really, really nice. All right, I'm just going to pick them up randomly and see what I've got. I've got 10 other materials. I don't want to make this video too long, And like I said, I am basically just giving my impressions. This is an aroma chemical called applelide, Apple-E, applelide. And with a lot of these proprietary aroma chemicals that come from companies like Givaudan or Simrise or International Flavors and Fragrances, they give them their naming conventions usually give you a clue about roughly what they're supposed to be mimicking in terms of smells. And I'm no expert about how they're derived, what chemical structures are, but I'm really mainly interested in what they smell like, how they work in a perfume, perhaps how they work with other materials. Okay, so there is definitely a distinct fruitiness to this apple-eyed, and I mean, this is to me not so much the smell of a natural fresh biting into a natural fresh apple. It's very much an apple that you might smell in apple flavored products, for instance, like apple candy. It's kind of a candied apple smell. There is a floral aspect to it, and I can imagine that this would also be used in combination with quite a few floral materials to maybe enhance probably the fruity aspects or the sweetness of some of those particular flowers. So that's apple-eyed. This one here is lilac pentonate. And obviously, I'm expecting this to be predominantly a floral smell. Although I have to admit, I don't get to actually smell a lot of real natural lilac here. I mean, lilac grows in Australia, but I don't see it very often. So when I first smelled this is quite an interesting smell to me, albeit familiar as well. So this one is a little bit hard for me to actually describe in words, other than to say that I don't know how I'm going to describe this. I mean, it's an obvious floral smell to me. I mean, but it's unlike any kind of white flower or rose or even yellow floral. I lack the words to try and describe what I'm smelling here, but there's a, there's a there's a I want to say inkiness about this. It's not so much inky. Yeah, it's inky. It's it's kind of a cool, darker floral smell. I would like if I was being a little bit abstract, I would describe this as walking through a garden at night time on a cool night, and flowers are blooming, but the air temperature and the lack of light can affect the way you smell something. And lilacs have this kind of, well, I mean, lilac pentanol has this kind of sort of dark, melancholic floral note. It's really interesting, and something that I would never. I mean, you probably smell it in a lot of perfumes. It's something that to an untrained nose would you would find hard to detect individually in a perfume. All right, moving on. We have something called safraleine. Now, as you can tell from the name, it is safraleine is mimicking some aspects of natural saffron, and also when I smelled this, I immediately recognized this from a perfume that I used to own. The thing about safraleine is that it's quite leathery to me, and but it has also this warmth, this kind of smooth, crackling spice about it. Not so much crackling, just this fizzy, warm spice. But it's mainly what you could smell potentially in a lot of leather accords. And what I like about safraleine, I know that there are different ways to build a leather accord in perfumery, different combinations of materials. There is a material that I've mentioned before that on its own is, to me, is one of my least favorite things to smell, and that's usually and it's isobutyl quinoline, IBQ, which is used in a lot of leather accords. However, when I smell leather with materials like safraleine, they are a lot more pleasing to my nose. I generally find those leather accords to be just the smoother, warmer leather, minus any of that harsh, dark bitterness that you can get with the other materials. This the first thing I thought of, and I'm not even sure, I can't confirm if it's used in this perfume. It reminded me of the leather accord in Tom of Finland from Ethyl d'Orange, which I used to own. And that was very, it's kind of leaning towards a suede leather. And safraleine is a really lovely material, actually. And I've probably smelt it in many other accords. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if this is used quite a bit in Ganymede by Marc-Antoine Badois. Safraleine. Okay, what do we have here? Aha, this is an aldehyde. It's a C10 aldehyde. Now, I have smelled this before briefly, and when I smelled this, funnily enough, my first impressions were that there is an obvious fruitiness to it, but to me, it was very much leaning towards a ripe peach fruitiness, which was interesting. And then when I, just speaking to someone who's familiar with this product and who actually sent me the material, people get orange facets, orange fruitiness to it, which I can understand when I smell it, and I can understand. But for some, I personally can't shake this peachiness from it. Now, I don't know if other types of aldehydes lean more towards different fruity notes than others. This particular one, C10, really has that kind of they're in the ballpark. Orange and peach to me are in that kind of warm, fruity, sweet zone as a smell. It's lovely, and you can see how this particular aldehyde, and I'm sure as with others, is used to could boost other different materials in building a perfume as well. You can, when you smell an aldehyde like this in isolation, you can see how it can instantly brighten whatever it's added to. So I want to smell more aldehydes, obviously, but this whole process is just really interesting, and it kind of now I'm going to use this kind of music analogy because it's what I'm familiar with. So, like, I used to be right into sound mixing and engineering, and when I smell materials like this, I liken them to when a sound engineer is listening to the raw recordings of an instrument, and the basic bones of a composition is there, and you're listening to it, and they might add some small effects here and there, like, you know, EQ, a bit of reverb, delay, whatever. And I liken some of these perfumery materials a little bit to that. I like to use that analogy because they're not making the perfume, they're not like necessarily an essential thing in making a perfume, but they can certainly enhance some properties of a perfume. And I'm talking about all aroma chemicals or materials are like that, but some are, like, I can see how some are just purely used to add a bit of texture rather than the actual smell as well, which is also a reason why you'll see a lot of perfumes, and you'll see a note pyramid. Now, note pyramids will give you the bare bones of what you might expect a perfume to smell like, but there's certainly no one should be under any illusion that a note pyramid is what ingredients are in a perfume. In fact, some note pyramids, name accords or notes that, if you want to get technical about it and look at a particular composition, might not be there in any form at all, if you're lucky enough to see actual formulas for perfumes. This next one I'm going to smell is one that I have heard of a lot, and particularly I've read a lot of reviews where the reviewers are very familiar with this particular smell. I think it's one of the things that are usually listed as an ingredient on perfumes when you look at the back of a box. This is norlimbanol, I think it's pronounced. Now, this one here is interesting, okay, because the minute I smell this, it is instantly familiar, okay, and I put that down to, I guess, because I've probably smelled this in a lot of perfumes. But what does it smell like? To me, I instantly get like this kind of dark, dry wood, but old wood. Not so much old wood. There's nothing fresh about it at all. Dark, dry, old timber. So not a fresh cut tree or anything like that. It's just this. It's actually quite kind of. It's quite pungent as well, so it's like I don't want to say rotting wood because it's not. It's not as a negative a connotation as a. There is a saltiness about it as well. So I guess this is used in a lot of bass accords in combination with obviously other materials to build these popular woody ambers that are in a lot of perfumes. So you can see why something like norlimbanol is used a lot, and some might argue that it's overused, but it's interesting because I find this, when I smell it in isolation, it's actually quite subtle. Oh, something just reminded me of a particular perfume when I sniffed it. Then I'm not going to get it because it'll be frustrating me for the rest of this video. It's quite subtle, but you could see how if you blended it with other things, it would definitely impose its character on other materials as well. Okay, so what do we have here? Okay, this one here is magnolan, and by the name, I guess it's based around magnolia. Oh, this is beautiful. Now, this, again, like lilac, magnolia, even though there are plenty around my neighborhood, I don't know, a lot of these trees around my neighborhood don't actually smell when they're in flower too much anyway, or I don't get close enough to smell them. But this is actually a lovely smell, a lovely familiar floral smell to me. It's actually quite heady to me, but not in the way that white florals are heady. This is more diffusive, if I can describe it that way. It doesn't feel concentrated. It feels like it spreads out into the air. It shares characteristics with other kind of flowers, like what am I trying to think of? Peony, perhaps. It has like this kind of a little bit of a watery quality as well. Raindrops on petals. Oh, it's lovely, magnolan. Okay, so obviously, I guess this would be used a lot to build on particular floral accords, and particularly florals that that are actually difficult or impossible to derive in a natural to acquire in a natural manner from the actual plant themselves. Ethyl lactate is what I'm smelling now. I don't know. I hadn't actually heard of this material until I received it. And the first smell, I didn't really know what to make of it. But essentially, what this smells like to me, I'm guessing ethyl lactate is a material that, if I had to guess, would be used in quite a lot of, I guess, dried fruit accords, kind of fruity, boozy accords as well. I mean, I can smell what I think is pineapple, but it's almost like a stewed pineapple. It doesn't really smell like fresh pineapple that's just been sliced as well. But it's otherwise it's a general stewed fruitiness about it as well. It's actually quite lovely. It's sweet, as you would expect. But yeah, you smell this and you think, yeah, I can see how some of those stewed fruit accords are made, how some of those boozy accords might have a material like this in it. Uh, Now, this one here is something called mahoganate. And my guess is it's based on mahogany wood, mahogany wood is not something that I recognize as a smell as it is. So, okay. Well, look, the first thing that jumped to mind with mahogany is it is a woody smell, but to me this is like like a dark antique lacquered wood smell, and maybe that's what it is going for. There is a yeah, that's pretty much what I smell. Obviously a lot of mahogany wood is used in fine furniture and older pieces like that. And probably to a lot of people's minds, it's the smell of mahogany. I don't know what natural fresh mahogany would smell like, but it's a lovely woody smell. It is mellow. It probably this is something I guess would be really good in some woody, some deep, dark, ambery accords as well to add a bit of solidity to it, and make something smell or give the impression of what's the word I'm looking for? Give the impression of something a little bit more sophisticated, mature. It's not quite what I'm going for, but I hope you get get the idea. Okay, two more and then I'm done. This one here is something called blue cypress. Now, blue cypress is a cypress that's actually native to Australia, which I didn't know. And blue cypress to me is smoky. It's very mentholated, or I mean, there are similarities to me with eucalyptus in blue cypress, except I think blue cypress is a lot smoother and less, and to me, less harsh than eucalyptus, less medicinal than eucalyptus. And it's actually a beautiful woody material to lend a little bit of airiness and a touch of smokiness to anything. And you can imagine this being used in, like, it would make for an interesting material to use in, like, in some kind of fougere composition, to just complement something like a lavender as well. So blue cypress is actually quite interesting. Now I probably left my favorite one to the end. This one is Hay Absolute. And, like, when I did smell this before, it's very familiar, especially because I do have a couple of perfumes I like that have a hay note in it, and it is instantly recognizable. But see, it's interesting. This what I'm smelling here. Yes, you smell the hay. There is something actually quite anisic in this as well, on top of that beautifully toasted, dried grassiness of it. Obviously, this is a beautiful pairing, maybe with tobacco absolute as well. I did read something about Hay Absolute that Hay Absolute actually has quite a bit of coumarin, which is also found in tonka beans, but the coumarin is only released in hay when it's dried grass, and it's not really there when it's green and lush. So when it becomes hay, there is all that lovely sweet nutty coumarin that is found in here as well. I read that, but you can smell it. But the thing that surprised me a lot with this is how I can smell quite a bit of kind of licorice. I guess the anisic side of licorice, but not dominant. But it's there. It's definitely there. It's such a beautifully complex material as well, and you could see how something like Hay Absolute could just totally change the nature of a particular composition just by adding a little bit of it in there. Oh, that's so good. All right. So look, I hope that you liked that. I've got other raw materials that I could do more videos on. I just thought I'd do it, and I did want to do it as a kind of first impression and tell you what I smell, rather than do in-depth study and research and tell you what they're made from and blah blah blah, how they're extracted. But I found it interesting, and I think, honestly, look, anyone with an interest in perfumery, to the extent that they want to be able to talk about it, write reviews, and you don't have to be a reviewer, but if you are going to talk about perfumes, I think you could just, it's definitely a benefit to at least familiarize yourself with some very common perfumery materials, and you can start in the kitchen pantry by smelling spices, any citruses, a lot of people recognize those smells. And then, other stuff that you can buy as essential oils. Some of this interesting stuff to me are the aroma chemicals that the aroma chemical companies actually manufacture and have copyrights of, and they're a proprietary product that they produce only. it's just really, really interesting to me, and it's a little bit of a geek out as a perfume nerd to be able to smell some of these materials, and also really help you understand how it's not, it really isn't just for a perfumer who is serious about making their own perfume. It's not just a matter of mixing a few oils together and diluting them in alcohol and that's it. Like there's definitely such a huge palette of colors to work with, if I can borrow a painting analogy, like a sound engineer with an armory of special effects that they could use to process sound. I can like, I have so much respect for a perfumer, especially one who can think about a composition and decide, oh, maybe I should use this raw material without even smelling it, But it's kind of, I would love to be able to have that kind of familiarity with materials, that I could smell something and say maybe it needs a little bit of this. So yeah, and look, you know who you are. Thank you for sending me these materials. I really, really appreciate it. And I've really enjoyed doing this video. So I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. And any questions, comments about raw materials, leave a comment. And I'll see you all in my next video, I guess. So bye.